what was the biggest surprise to you in going after the story?
I mean, how can I say I was surprised, having lived through what we did through the first administration, and actually the series goes actually all the way up to after January 6th and the fallout from that event. So I started this project in 21, but in many ways I was tangentially connected to it since 2015 and 16. I was actually working for Russia Today in 2015. I went to Moscow. I was there with Michael Flynn, General Flynn, when he was at a dinner for a celebration of RT's news channel. And that famous dinner became part of the basis, for the whole accusation that Flynn was a Russian agent. Because I was working for Russia Today with great journalists and hosts like Jesse Ventura and Chris Hedges and Tom Hartman and so many others, Abby Martin, I understood like this whole narrative of Russian collusion is pretty thin, because they're out there. The intelligence community's assessment is saying that RT, which is a bunch of Americans like myself, doing news and journalism and giving our perspective on matters. We are the Russian agents. I mean, that's how I understood that there was something very wrong with the narrative. And obviously, as we dug deeper into the stories that we focused upon, we were able to show how the conspiracy was not Russian collusion. It was really U.S. and Five Eyes intelligence conspiracy to try to paint a picture of Trump as a Russian puppet.
Can we talk about the Five Eyes situation? Because in about a half an hour, we're live right now on SiriusXM at 1:33 in the East. We're going to get, I believe, a positive vote on Tulsi Gabbard out of committee, which is great. But some of the things that she's spoken out about when it comes to the distrust of the Intelligence Committee right now amongst the American public did not go over well with the senators in that room, left or right. They all seemed adverse to her. They all seemed like, I think they'd all wish that Trump had nominated somebody else. But can you just give people a flavor for what you're talking about, and so they know why did Trump go with such a non-traditional pick?
Yeah. Well, Tulsi's, as you know, a lot of us have shifted political positions over these years because we're trying to find, I think what might be more of traditionally be kind of a traditional American centrist position, trying to figure that out in this insane time that we've been living through, where a lot of us who were critical during the Obama years, all of a sudden found ourselves outside the Democratic fold, who at one moment were criticizing the Bush administration for unwarranted surveillance of Americans, the Patriot Act, things like this, right? The endless war agenda. We went from criticizing that to then the Democrats supporting it under Obama, and a lot of people being disenchanted by that. I think Tulsi, who served her country, served abroad, came back. She was Democrat. She was basically kicked out of the party for not going along with the rigging that went on in 2016 when the Democrats gave the nomination to Hillary, right? So she then basically says, well, I'm standing on principle here, and kind of gets isolated from the party. I mean, she stays with it, obviously, until 2020. If I recall, she was part of that primary debates. But essentially, she realized the party's gone in a different direction. It's gone extreme pro-military industrial complex, national security state, endless war agenda. The only person who's come out swinging against that since 2016 is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has reshaped the Republican Party around that, what people call America First, right? But American interests first principle, which really is an old, it's an old Republican principle. And I don't know if it was ever a Democrat principle, because the Democrats were always actually the ones who started the wars. World War I was Democrat. World War II was Democrat. Vietnam War was Democrat. So people forget this. And I think that Trump took it back more to this Republican route of, hey, let's focus on our country. Tulsi obviously rallied around that. So yeah, giving perspective, when you're talking about a massive military industrial national security state apparatus that is costing trillions of dollars, I don't know about annually, but certainly over the course of years, then you're talking about a lot of money, and it's circling through what General Flynn talks about with this sort of this why Washington and the counties around Washington are in the top 10 wealthiest counties in the country, right? Because you're talking about massive contracts and things like this. So those that have been there, like Flynn and Tulsi, who've seen it firsthand and said, hey, I want to stand on principle, not on profit, they end up becoming targeted and accused of being, I don't know, Russian puppets because they're opposed to
That's what happened to Tulsi. So
exactly.
One of the interesting characters, I mean, we play that soundbite of Kash Patel, but one of the things I've just made a mental note of is he was working with Devin Nunes. They were looking at this Russian collusion nonsense, saying like, this isn't right. This stinks. And Kash is like this firebrand, fighter. He's a very colorful character. If you talk to him, he's just kind of fun to talk to, and he doesn't mince words. I like him, but he's kind of fun. And he's got flair, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And on the other side really was like Robert Mueller, James Comey, like these distinguished, respected, old school prosecutors, right? And so when there was this battle of like, who's telling the truth? Is Trump a spy? Does he have a server from Russia in Trump Tower where they, as Don Jr. said, we couldn't even figure out how to order French fries, never mind how to order the Russians around. And then you see Kash, who's like this, like, yeah, this is bullshit. What's happening? Like in Devin Nunes, he was kind of like a low-level congressman. He was never even that, high up. It's like, but they were right. They were right. And it's really the reason why Kash Patel is about to be our next FBI director. You have something in one of the episodes about Kash figuring out who is behind the vaunted Steele dossier. The one that talked about Trump's ties to Russia and how he had the prostitutes urinate on the bed. Trump, the germaphobe, wanted somebody to pee in front of him. Okay. There was a time where we were believing all this, or at least asked to. And here's a bit of that, about how that went down. From episode 4, SOT 29.
To break through the walls of DOJ, literally, to go and get access to a FISA when I heard that through our sources that a Trump campaign official was being monitored. And I was like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I gotta go read this thing. When we first read the FISA, half of it was blacked out. And then we had to go and fight for the redactions to be lifted just to read it. And then we figured it out. I was like, dude, this Steele dossier is in this thing.
So the Steele dossier was the basis of
the whole basis of FISA. It wasn't just the FBI. You can read the dossier and read the FISA and know there's no way it was just these guys. Somebody else is in on it. And so we actually were running a separate investigation outside of the DOJ FBI bubble into how this thing was put together. And we had our own sources, and one of them told us the money for this thing came from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And this is one of those like moments where you're like, never forget. So I run into Devin's office, it was like 9 a.m. He's like, dude, I figured out who paid for this. And he's like, huh? I'm like, the Steele dossier. He's like, I figured out who paid for it. And I was like, Hillary Clinton. And he goes, if you're gonna start drinking at this early in the morning, get out of my office.
So just for the people who haven't been consuming Russiagate recently, they're talking about how the Steele dossier, this made-up piece of alleged intelligence, was the basis for getting a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. It was like they used this made-up piece of intel to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. Yet another reason why these FISA warrants became controversial and were mentioned repeatedly in the Tulsi Gabbard hearing, as though they're totally vaunted, they're above reproach, you have to love them, you have to support them. She's expressed some reservations about how we've used FISA in the past, so have many others. Anyway, this is all the background to that, in part. Mm-hmm. And then him asking, well, who's behind the dossier? I don't trust I definitely don't like the warrant, and I don't trust the dossier that was the basis of the warrant. And oh my God, it's the Hillary Clinton campaign. Like he says, the aha moment, the moment you will remember where you were.
Yeah. Well, so it's so interesting with the Steele dossier, and we actually get in the Rudy Giuliani episode, he talks a bit about his sources in the Ukraine saying that the dossier that Steele cooked up was cooked up in the Ukraine. And it kind of now you start to understand, like when you watch the series, you start to get the part of the bigger picture, not the full picture, but part of the bigger picture of why Ukraine has played such a key role in our foreign policy the last 10 years, going back to 2014 in the Maidan coup, right? Yeah, and how we've basically escalated that conflict to the place where it now is in war with Russia. But you see how this dossier was was concocted through channels and allies of the Democrats there in Ukraine, and basically then Steele himself being a former Russian intel guy, former British intel on the Russia desk, but had not been to Russia for a long time. The Steele and the fact of also Papadopoulos, who was also targeted by the FBI's investigation, having this meeting with an Australian ambassador in London, a lot of the real cross channels going through this investigation all indicate that there's not just CIA, U.S. intelligence. There's also British intelligence having its fingerprints on this setup of Trump. And why British intelligence? Well, this is an old game as far as we have to recognize the British are not our friends. The British strategically use America. They've been using America for over 100 years, going back to before the First World War. But you think about it, they use America. Think about the Iraq invasion most recently, when it was British intelligence that was handing us the allegations. Remember about the enriched uranium coming from Niger and things like this. That was a lot of British intelligence was handing that over. The British are very dangerous to people. I think American patriots have to recognize, just like we are now recognizing, hey, maybe Canada is not necessarily like our friend. Trudeau and company are not necessarily on the same page as we are. The British, likewise, you have to be very careful about, because they will use us to play their games, to be the instrument of their war agenda, to preserve what was formerly their empire. Now we are sort of the champions of it, right, in terms of these zones of influence and trade and economics.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point, as the largest generation is, of course, hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing right now to protect your family for the future? Gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to the number 989898 and get your free info kit on gold and a copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings and diversify them. Text my initials, MK, to the number 989898 to learn more today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.